Okay, Isaac's here, Esther's here. Did you phone me, Esther?
I did. Did
I
you
could
get a
not
lot of what?
I could not open the Zoom account. It was saying waiting for host and it wouldn't let
Yeah,
me.
that's what we were getting too.
So it wouldn't let me I had to log out and then reopen it up as if I was opening an account for the first time kind of a thing. But I finally got through it and did it. All right.
I
So last week we were talking about timers and we were saying, how come we're allowed to use a timer for Shabbat to turn on lights, but you can't use a timer for this, you can't use a timer for that. You're allowing it for one thing and not another. And we said, because it's what the community does. And it's interesting how the rabbis, whenever we talk about the rabbis, we call them Chazal. Chazal says, we're going to allow you to do it for this because if I take it away from you, you're going to do it anyway. And then we don't look good as rabbis because then we're telling you not to do something that you're already going to do. And the perfect example of that is, I always use this example because I find it fascinating to me, is that we're taught we're not supposed to eat pat akum. Pat akum means pat is bread, and akum means bread baked by idol worshippers. But that could mean anybody. Forget about an idol worshiper. Let's say I like the cornbread from the Italian bakery down the street. The Gemara says you can buy that bread if it's a nicer bread than the Jewish bakery is selling you next door. I think that's fascinating. They're saying, oh, you can buy the non-Jewish bread if it's a nicer bread. Well, like you could, why bread? And then in France, they said, well, we buy it anyway. We like buying our French stick. We're not going to live without it. We got to have our red wine. We want to have our cheese and we want to have our fancy bread. So the rabbis in France set a standard and said, you can't stop us because we're going to do it anyway. And then you have always a machloket. You have a disagreement between the rabbis. And what happens is they say, oh, but if you put a timer on, you can't change the positions of the timer once Shabbat has happened. But they're saying you can move them and change the pins maybe if it's in one certain way. Let's say the lights are on and you want to change the setting to delay when the lights are going to come off. You realize, oh, it's going to be dark in an hour and I've got it set to go off in an hour. He says, if you delay the switch off time by moving the pins, this is Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was a famous rabbi of our generation, of our time. He's not like it's not like you're talking about Rambam. You're talking about somebody from the 19th century who lived in an area which they named after him called Ramat Shlomo in Israel. And he said, you're only delaying something that is going to happen inevitably anyway. It's inevitable. Eventually the lights are going to go off. So if I move the timer an hour later, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says, that's not so bad because you're only delaying the inevitable. He said, you only mean that you like to delay the darkness. You want to delay the place from being dark because you don't want to come to, in the old days, you would have had to put on more, you can't add more oil to the oil lamp. Like if you have an oil lamp and you're not using electrical power, are you allowed to now pour more oil into the reservoir to keep the oil lamp lit on Shabbat? You're not supposed to do that. He says, but if you're talking about a timer where you have the pins and you're just changing the pins, he says you can move the pins around if making the adjustment on a different timer causes you to turn the lights off, even temporarily on Shabbos. He said, that's not good. So you can't move it so that the light's going to go off and then come back on. You shouldn't be doing that. But he said, how about this? Rotating the disc back a little bit. If you're just rotating the disc, moving the disc, if you're allowed to move the disc a little bit, he said, that's okay. He said, you can't take a pin out or unscrew. And the very original ones, they weren't just pins that slotted in. you had to actually unscrew. If you had one of the really old timers that came out, one of the early timers, you unscrewed a pin. He said you if you're actively unscrewing a pin, he said maybe you shouldn't do that. So there were all these different leniencies, and then they give us I love this leniency. They go, therefore, in a makom tzarech, you know what a makom tzarech is? A place of need, a time of need. He goes, in a place of need, in a situation where you have an old sick person, they might trip if they're going to the bathroom. We don't want the darkness, it'll make your Shabbos miserable. You won't be able to see the label on your medication. You might take the wrong medication. They go in a makam tzarech, and then he says, in a makam tzarech gadol, in a great time of need, he said, there could be a leniency. Well, if you're making a leniency, you're making a leniency. Remember we talked about the whole Zoom thing on the Seder. They made a leniency. They opened up a can of worms. Well, you can only do it for 2021. But in 2022, when COVID isn't as bad, and by the way, it's getting worse again, we can see that in the world a little bit. They say you shouldn't Zoom next year, only this year. Okay, you can't eat shrimp this year, but next year we're going to allow you to eat it. But the following year, don't eat it anymore. You know what I mean? You got to think of what it is. And they often bring the example of bishul, which is cooking, because don't forget, when you turn something on, we're not talking about an LED light today. We're talking about the old incandescent lights. They had an element which heated up inside a reservoir. It resembles cooking, they said, because the element is heating up. When you have an electric stove, you put your pot on top of the stove, you have an element. It's an electrical element. How is that different from what's inside the light bulb and the incandescent thing? So he said you could be in a makam tzarech gadol, in a time of great need, maybe you won't be in violation. And then he says, so we understand from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and you'll get to know why I'm going here with this. He says, if we can change the timer settings, without disengaging the apparatus, then you can change the settings in a way that you can change the timer to go off and on, the light to go off and on, because you're not disengaging anything. That means if you can just turn the dial back a little bit and say, I'm going to make the timer think it's 7 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock. So you're turning the dial back so it's 7 o'clock. That buys you another hour before the timer goes off on Shabbos. That's a way to get around things. Now, I don't know how many of you use timers on Shabbos. You don't use timers on Shabbos. It doesn't matter. I'm not teaching you should go and start. You want to become Shomer Shabbos? Terrific. You don't. That's what I'm saying is that it's nice to know what the thinking of the rabbis are, what they're telling us that we're supposed to do, and what the strict opinion is and what the lenient. So he has a very lenient position here. The Chazon Ish, who was famous for his shiurim. Now, I don't mean shiurim classes. I mean shiurim. A shiur is a measurement. Elu davarim shein lahem shiur hapeya. You know what that is? In the morning before we daven, we say Elu davarim shein lahem shiur hapeya. And we talk about hapeya, meaning the corner of the field that we leave for the poor people. And a shiur is a measurement that they're saying there's no fixed measurement for doing these mitzvot. If I tell you, you observe Shabbos, you have 3 brownie points. So when you go to heaven, you've got all these it doesn't work that way. I'm going to do a mitzvah today. I don't want to bother with that mitzvah because it's not, we don't know what the measurement is, what God's measurement is for the shiurim, the measurements. The Chazon Ish was famous for shiurim, different kind of measurements. He was famous for telling you what a revi'it is, which means how much wine should you drink on Pesach for the Arba Kosot? Should it be this much? Should it be this much? So a lot of people follow the Chazon Ish's measurements. Chazon Ish published many works, and one of his first works is called the Orach Chaim. And you know, he commented on on the Shulchan Aruch greatly, but his real name, he was known as the Chazon Ish, but his real name is Rav Karelitz. Now, one of the things is, have you ever come to Suda Shlishit on one of the Shabbos? Every year before Pesach, Rabbi Shaim would give the same talk, and I loved it. And he said that kashrut is different on Pesach than it is the rest of the year. And Rabbi Shaim taught that one breadcrumb ruins everything for Pesach. Everything becomes asur, everything becomes forbidden. But you know, we talked about the Italian guy next door and he cooked a plate of pork. He doesn't know that you don't eat pork, and he comes in with the platter and he goes, and I always laugh when he comes in with the platter and one of his pieces of pork happens to fall into your chicken soup and knedlach. It's not 1/60th. You can eat the chicken soup. Look at Ruth, she's shocked. Ruth, you can eat you didn't do it intentionally, it was an accident. He didn't do it intentionally, it was an accident. It's less than 1/60th. I make a pot chicken soup, it's this big, because whatever is left, I freeze it and I use it for next week. I have a pot, a huge pot. So when you make a huge pot of chicken soup like this, and one of his pieces of pork falls in, you can eat the soup. If you can fish it out, you can take it out. You can eat the pork that's inside too. You can eat the whole thing. I don't know too many Rabbanim that are going to follow that, but that's what the Shulchan Aruch teaches us. So the Chazon Ish, what Rabbi Shaim, I'm not telling you the honest truth. That's the rule. So one of the things that the Rabbi Shaim used to bring out every year before Pesach at Seudah Shlishit, you remember the glass? He brought out a little glass. It was about this big, and it had lines on it. And one of the lines on it was from the Chazon Ish. And he said, look, the Chazon Ish has markings of how much is a kazait. We say a kazait. What's a kazait? Is a kazait, you said you got to eat a kazait of matzah on Pesach. Is a kazait a whole matzah? Because some people real frum, they say, you know what, I don't know what a kazait is. An olive might be very big in some countries. I better eat the whole matzah. And some people say, no, a kazait is like this, or it's like this. So, you know, depends what a kazait is, what your measurement is. Chazon Ish said, this is what a kazait is. This is what a revi'it is. This is how much wine you need to drink for the arba kosot. And these kinds of things. So when Rabbi Shaim had a glass like that and I saw it, I said, where did you get that? There's no such thing anymore. You can't get it. It's from Israel. A long time ago, I got it. And so when somebody tells me you can't get something, I have to go searching the world for it. I have to have it, you know? I had to have this glass. So I've been searching, I think for 20 years. I've been in Israel. I've been to Borough Park. I figured if you can buy it anywhere, you're going to be able to buy it in Brooklyn and Borough Park among the Hasidim. I went there to Eichler's store. They don't have it. I went to all these places. I looked everywhere. Nobody had it. One day, this person was selling one on eBay. On eBay. Who sells the Chazon Ish's glass on eBay? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I bid on it. Nobody else bid on it. Who else would even know what it is or want it? I think I got it for $4. I think the shipping costs more, and they shipped it to me, and I have it, and it's in a fade. So I feel good. I have one of these glasses with the measurements. I'll bring it next time and show it to you. The Chazon Ish prohibited changing timers altogether. I'm not going to go into the whole reasons why. It's not that important. I mean, I could, but I'll take up a whole class telling you what he said. And I don't think that's the point. The point is he said, forget it. You can't, you set it in motion before Shabbat. Don't monkey with it, and whenever it goes off, it goes off. And that was it. But what I started to talk about at the end of last week, and I promised you we'd go to there, is a different problem altogether. And how does it relate to Pesach? And the problem is time zones. I said, can you fax something? I mean, I don't know who faxes anymore, but a lot of us, some people do, banks do, financial institutions use it. Government of Canada certainly uses it. You know, I don't fax, I use email, I use scanning, whatever, but I want to fax something to someone in Israel And it's already Shabbos in Israel, but it's not Shabbos here. Some people never sleep, so it wouldn't matter. But I mean, if it was a Shabbos, they wouldn't check it. And can I intentionally, forget about by accident, okay, if you take a paper and I fax it to Rabbi Fink. I mean, Rabbi Fink, he lives in the holy neighborhood of Ramat Shlomo. He's a holy guy. And I want to fax him my midterm exam. And I want to get it in before, I got to get it in. It's Friday. It's an hour before Shabbos. I want to send it in so he can see it on Sunday and mark it. But I don't even think about what's going on there. It's here. I fax it to Rabbi Fink on Friday, 5 minutes before candle lighting. And then after I send it, I go, what did I do? I just sent it to him. It's Shabbos there. Now his machine is going, and it's making the paper. He's going to look over and he's going to see that Moshe Loomer in Toronto he sent me on Shabbos, he sends me a fax. He can't wait. The answer is it's allowed. You can send something from your time to another time zone. You're allowed to send. Celia is saying to Leonard, you see, I told you so. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. No, you're not saying that. Okay. I'm just guessing. When you go to the movie and you see people's, I don't go to the movie anymore. I don't go to the theaters. But when you did and you saw other couples, they were talking. I wonder if they're talking about the movie. I'm too busy watching what other people are saying than watching the movie. I find people watching more entertaining because you're wondering, what are they saying? Problem number one, there has to be a starting point. There's a point from starting. Oh, she said what? It's not polite? It's not polite to send it on Shabbos to someone. That's very interesting. I never even thought about that. It's not a nice thing to do, maybe. And maybe if it's in their home, I'm disturbing them on Shabbos by having the machine go, but not intentionally. But I said, okay. So there has to be a starting point where we have an international dateline. And the question of sending this fax from one time zone where it isn't Shabbos, not Shabbos in Toronto, to a time zone that it is Shabbos, the chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Lau, wrote a tshuva in a book called the Yachal Yisroel. And the question is, can you send a fax from a location, he says, where the Kedusha of Shabbos, I love that, the holiness of Shabbos hasn't yet started here, to a country, a place where Shabbos has started? And the answer is that in the Shulchan Aruch, so who wrote the Shulchan Aruch? I review every week, I like to tell you. So Rav Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He was a leading Sephardic rabbi of Spain, and who commented on it that is greatly well known is the Ramah. The Ramah is Rav Moshe Isserlis, and for most of us here who are of Ashkenazi descent and follow the Ashkenazi ways, we have to follow what the Ramah's opinions are in terms of what his opinion is in the Shulchan Aruch is sometimes what we have to follow. I wish he minded his own business, poor Rav Moshe Isserlis, sometimes. I love what he says, but because if it wasn't for him, we'd have a lot more leniencies when it comes to kashrut, because the Sephardim have leniencies that we don't have. But the point is that it says in the Shulchan Aruch that when somebody has accepted Shabbos, what does that mean, accepted Shabbos? It means you went to shul, maybe you said Baruch Hu, it means candle lighting in the home. They accept Shabbos early. So we know that you can accept Shabbos like an hour and a half before Shabbos. Shabbos starts at 7 o'clock, let's say, or 8 o'clock at night. And, you want to have dinner at 7 o'clock. And it's a mitzvah to say, I want extra Shabbos. It's a good thing. I want extra Shabbos. It's not enough that they're giving me from 8 o'clock p.m. tonight till 9 o'clock p.m. the next day. I want 7 o'clock Shabbos, so you're going to accept Shabbos in your home. But once you do that, it's Shabbos, right? So you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to bring Shabbos in early into your home, when you never bring Shabbos in early? In the wintertime, because it already comes so early. Who wants to bring Shabbos in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? You're busy running around to the bakeries and to here and to there to pick up the clean, to whatever you have to do. There's so many, you want to check your emails. It's funny, we're a people that we want to bring Shabbos early when it starts at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. We're bringing it in at 7 o'clock. But who brings it in the winter time at, early? We're looking at the watch, we're going, Shabbos starts at 4:45 and you're counting the minutes of everything you can get done before 4:45. There are things that you're not supposed to do leading into Shabbat. Leading into Shabbat. I'll give you an example. You want to set the washing machine before Shabbos because you want to wash clothes. And you'll dry them after Shabbos. You leave them in the machine. You're not going to take them out on Shabbat. After Shabbat, you'll take them out and you'll just throw them in the dryer. It'll be okay. Is it nice 10 minutes before Shabbos to set the machine on? So Shabbos starts at 4:30. At 4:25, I'm going to turn the machine on. Oh, great. The machine's going to wash my clothes and I'll light the candles at Shabbos. I didn't do anything. It's allowed. But it's not nice. It's not nice that now you brought Shabbos in and now you hear the noise of the spinning. Who needs that in the home while you have people? It's not nice. It's not Shabbos day, right? So it's not that you are violating the laws, but it's still not a nice thing to do. All right. You set the washing machine on 20 minutes before Shabbos, and you're thinking it'll be finished. The whole cycle will be finished by the time I light candles. And then you look at your watch and go, oops, I got to light candles. I got 1 minute. And you run and you light the candles. And after you light the candles, you're still hearing the machine going and the machine stops 5-10 minutes later. That's allowed because it was already into the cycle of finishing. That's permitted on Shabbos. Similarly, you're making a cholent on Friday. And, what happens is Marvin brings home 2 friends 20 minutes before Shabbos starts. And he says to Adele, oh, I met my friends here and they have no place to stay. They're going to stay with us, Adele. Hope you don't mind. I hope you have enough food. And she says, Marvin, what are you, crazy? I cooked 2 pieces of chicken for you and me. I didn't cook for like the extra 2 people. What are we going to give them? And Marvin says, you'll make a cholent. It'll take you 10 minutes. So you make a cholent 10 minutes before Shabbos. And the cholent is now raw. You're not supposed to do that. The cholent has to be cooked machal ben drusai, kemachal ben drusai. It has to be cooked like the bandit who was on the run, 50% cooked before Shabbos starts. You're not, because that your intention is it has to already be in through the process, almost cooked. Because you're not supposed to be cooking on Shabbat. If it's already mostly cooked, that's a leniency, that's allowed. But to just start it 3 minutes before lighting, most people don't know that. You can't do that. Ava says, why doesn't Marvin help Adele? The guests can entertain themselves for a while. Well, it's true, but it's not. The problem is it's doing something with the intent that now you're going into doing something that isn't finished. It's not ready, and now that it's raw, and you're thinking that's great. It's going to continue to cook. So while it's cooking, even worse. I'm going to reach into the cholent pot because it'll be cooked in a couple of hours into Shabbos, and I'll reach in and I'll help myself after Adele goes to bed at night. She won't see me sneaking in. Marvin is going to go and sneak in with the spoon and help himself to a little bit of cholent that night. You're not allowed to do that because it wasn't completely cooked before Shabbat. You have to wait till the next day. These are the Shabbos rules that we don't know about. So they say in the Gemara, if you throw a raw bone in, they say the bone, but it means you could throw a piece of raw meat into the cholent right away then at that time, even though it's Shabbat. Now you're not going to come to eat it on Shabbat. on that evening. You're going to wait till the next day for it to be cooked, because the raw food that you just threw in is going to taint it. It's going to make it raw. Now there's something raw in there. I don't want to eat from raw meat. I'm going to leave it alone, and you won't come to help yourself to the cholent that night. You're going to wait till the next day. That's allowed. See the intent. And then they go further, and the rabbis say, if there's a makam of great tzorech, there's always a makam of great tzorech. There's always a great leniency for great need. And you bring home guests, and you won't have food, and you shouldn't be embarrassed to not have food to serve them, then you can make the cholent 10 minutes before. But not on a regular reason. What's the reason, Ava? Tell us. You say you know the issue.
It should be Shabbos-dik.
Should be Shabbos-dik. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be Shabbos-dik. I mean, there's the law, and then there's the feeling, so to speak.
You're 100% right, and that is the answer, because what the Yachal Yisroel, what Rav Lau is saying, is he's saying that there is something called the Kedusha of Shabbat, the holiness of Shabbat. And regardless of what the laws are, some things are just not, for lack of a better term, Shabbos-dik. If I say coconut marshmallows, right away you think Pesach-dik. You know, everybody knows those yellow bags, right? There's certain things that stick in our head as being a Pesach-dik a thing or a Shabbos-dik a thing. And there are certain things that are not Shabbos-dik. Hearing the washing machine, if you could set a timer on and say, you know, I don't want my clothes to sit all night in the washing machine on Friday night after it's washed and be sitting there wet until Saturday night afterwards when I want to dry the clothes. I would rather that they were ready just when Shabbos ends. Shabbos ends at 8 o'clock. I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to put a timer to the washing machine, you know, one of a clock timer. The timer will go on at 7 o'clock on Shabbos by itself. Wash the clothes. I didn't do anything. I set a timer. I didn't touch anything. You know, I put the soap and I threw the clothes in. I left it there. 7 o'clock, the timer comes on and washes the clothes, finishes washing. Now you take them out when Shabbos ends and you put them in the dryer. Halachically, there's no reason why you can't do it. But for Kedushat Shabbat, for the holiness of Shabbat, it's just as Celia said and as Ava said, it's not nice. It's not nice. Now, going back to these areas of time zones, what's not nice? Celia said, sending a fax on purpose so that Rabbi Fink has to see in Israel my exam coming through. It's not nice. I could have waited till after Shabbat. He would have got it Sunday morning. Better I should send it so his time is 3 o'clock in the morning and he'll wake up and hear the fax going at 3 o'clock in the morning. I emailed him the other day in our time zone, whatever it was the afternoon. And then when I emailed him, I realized I'm not getting an answer till tomorrow because it's 11:30 at night in Israel. So I sent him an email, but that's not going to wake him up. So I sent him an email thinking I'll get an answer. He emailed me back 5 minutes later. So I sent him back, after he answered me the question, I sent him back a response and I said, "Dear Rabbi," I said, "do you ever sleep?" You know, because like he's answering emails at 11:40 at night, which is amazing. He never answered that question because he probably thought, again, chutzpahdik, this Marshall Loomer in Toronto, chutzpahdik, he's asked me if I sleep, you know what I mean? But he gets a lot of questions. And here I am asking him a question at 11:30 at night, and he answered the question.
Marshall,
Anyway,
Marshall, can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
If it's our time zone before Shabbat, and you phone somebody who's Shomer Shabbos in Israel, they won't answer the phone.
Correct.
So was he able to read your fax when you sent it because it was Shabbos there?
Probably he wouldn't even look at it.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
He wouldn't go near the machine because the machine is not Shabbos-dik, it's muktzah. So he wouldn't even take the paper off the machine because the machine printed it in his home on Shabbos, so he'll leave it there. Now, that's because he's a frum rabbi and he doesn't need to look at Marshall Loomer's facts on what's so important. Let's say a different scenario. There's a rodef, there's a pursuant. What's a pursuant? The pursuant is, you're going to learn about this when we do medical stuff, but the pursuant is something that is threatening someone's life. Someone has a health issue. Cancer is a rodef. It's a pursuant. The cancer wants to destroy your life. You're allowed to destroy the pursuer. So that means if I sent the fax and it was a medical issue that is regarding someone's life, of course that medical professional, that person that can heal someone, that doctor, that scientist, that pharmacist even, who has to fill the prescription, of course on Shabbat they're allowed to look at a fax because somebody might need medication that could save their life. They might need a treatment. That's a whole different story. Whenever there's a rodef, whenever there's a pursuant, something that is involving a pekuach nefesh, life-saving situation, they're allowed to, of course, send, and not only that, but they could make a violation and they could even fax you back if that would be the only way. They should do whatever it is that's possible to benefit the person. But what about in an ordinary, well, let's say this, a Jew is asked, he asks another Jewish person to do work on Yom Tov. A Jew is allowed to ask someone else to do work on Yom Tov based on a halacha, moving a timer around. We don't ask other people to do work on Yom Tov. But here, listen to this. The Ramah, so Rav Moshe Isserles comments on the Shulchan Aruch. He comments on what the Mechaber, what Rav Yosef Karo says, and he says, you can benefit from whatever the other Jew does for you as well. The same thing of asking a Jew who hasn't daven Mariv and said Havdalah can be asked to do something by the Jew who hasn't yet said Havdalah and ended Shabbos. What am I saying here? I'm saying that if you've already said Mariv, okay, you've said Mariv on Shabbos. You went to shul early. By the way, conservative shuls are not the only shuls that daven early. Clanton Park in the summer has an early minyan, a real early one, like an hour and a half early often. So you daven early, you come home from shul, and you realize, I made the cholent and I did everything. I have company coming. The light in the bathroom is not on, and I've got old people coming to my house tonight for dinner. They're never going to be able to use the bathroom, and she's too old to climb the stairs and go all the way upstairs. She'll never make it up the stairs, and she'll be in the dark. I need the light on in that bathroom, but I've already davened and come home from shul. For me, it's Shabbos. Can I go next door and ask a Ben Eretz Yisroel, another Jew, can I ask another Jewish person to come into my house who hasn't accepted Shabbos yet and turn on the light in the bathroom for me? I've accepted Shabbos. I lit Shabbos candles. My wife lit Shabbos candles. I went to shul. I davened. I said Baruch Hu. I said Shema. I said Good Shabbos, everybody. I walked home. I get home and I go, Oy vey, the light in the bathroom is not on. I need the light in the bathroom on before the company comes. But my whole neighborhood and the holy neighborhood here of Bathurst, they're all Jews. So I have nobody non-Jew. I go and I ask Ruth Darman to come over next door, please, and turn for me on the light in the bathroom because she hasn't lit candles yet. She's waiting till later. She has to do some work still. She's finishing cooking. She's allowed, and Shabbos is going to start soon, but she's waiting until the last minute to light candles. But I accepted Shabbos. Can I ask Ruth to come in, who has not accepted Shabbos, and perform that task? Ruth is nodding her head. Yes, of course I can. Are you?
if Shabbat really hasn't started, then I'm thinking, yes, I can go and help you.
Even though I asked, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question about that. My sister used to live in an ultra-Orthodox Bathurst in Lawrence, Stormount Street, and her next-door neighbor, Mrs. Pearl, ultra-Orthodox, knew my sister and her family, her husband were Jews, but on Shabbat, and I always wondered, is that a violation? They used to call my sister because she was just conservative, not observant, I'm being honest. And Mrs. Pearl used to call my sister on Shabbat and say, Anna, come over, help me, because, well, maybe that was because her son was not well. Can you turn on the stove for us? Or can you help me get this medicine? So I always wondered, can a Jewish person ask another Jewish person to do these tasks on Shabbat? Sorry to interrupt you, I won't speak again.
You're not interrupting. I think it's fascinating. I'm so glad that you participated and shared that. The answer to the question is 100% not. No. It's a violation. It's a sin. It's an absolute sin. And you're not allowed to ask another Jew to come on Shabbos to your home if it's already Shabbos. If it's before Shabbat, I can ask you to come over to my house because I've accepted Shabbos and you have not. I say, Ruth, did you light Shabbos candles yet? Have you accepted Shabbos? You say, no, I have too much to do. I'm waiting till 8:29. Oh, I already went to shul. Would you mind coming over and turning on the light? I don't even have to hint. You know, there's two occasions. There's heat and there's lights. So my house is freezing. There's no furnace on and there's no coal. It's the call of the old days, or the switch isn't on. I can go next door to my neighbor who is not Jewish, and I can't ask them. By the way, you are allowed to ask them specifically outright to turn on heat for you or do coal or lights. Ava, I got her interest. Look at Ava's interested in this. You see, I woke you up. I pay attention to everybody here.
Sorry to interrupt. I've been awake this whole time. I'm just writing a note to myself based on what's going on.
All right, so listen to this. No, I'm joking with you. I'm not being serious. No, I'm not serious. I said it because you tilted your head in such a way that I said, oh, all of a sudden I struck a nerve. You see, you can't ask a non-Jew to come into your house and wash your clothes, but you can ask a non-Jew to turn on heat or lights, because those are the two things that bring the joy to Shabbos that you would need if it's freezing cold outside. How can you enjoy Shabbos? How can you get through Shabbos? You'll be so uncomfortable. That's not the purpose of Shabbat. But other tasks, absolutely not. You can't say, hey, can you do me a favor at Shabbos? I can't go to the Yorkdale. There's a sale on shoes. I want a pair of Louboutins. Can you go there and pick them up for me? I'll pay you after Shabbos. You can't do that. I can't even, you can't do that. But I can go next door to someone who is not Jewish. And I can say, it's freezing in my house. I wish the furnace was on. And if the neighbor comes over and says, I'll come and turn it on, you don't argue with them. Let them turn it on. It's great. Oi, it's so dark in my bathroom. If only there was a light on in my bathroom, I'd be so happy. They can come over and turn the light on for you in the bathroom. I'm commenting that it's dark in the room. So if they come over, they turn it on, that's okay. But you cannot ask another Jewish person after both parties have accepted Shabbat. And what does that mean? Let's say you're not an observant Jew, and your version of accepting Shabbat is doing nothing. You don't light candles. You don't go to shul. You don't even have, you don't make kiddush. You don't say Baruch Hu. You do nothing. Once the time of Shabbos has started, the time of Shabbos has started. If it says Shabbos is 8:30, it's 8:30. Whether you lit candles or you didn't light candles, you didn't do anything to accept Shabbat, but Shabbat has already started. So a Jewish person cannot go to another Jewish person and say, after Shabbat has started, can you come over and do this? Can you come over and put the food on the plata? Can't do that. But the person certainly can come over and say, can you please, Ruth, if you have not accepted Shabbos, and you say, no, I didn't light candles yet, I can ask you directly. I don't even have to hint and say, it's dark in my bathroom. I can say, Ruth, I have people coming over. I need the light on in the bathroom. You didn't accept. Please come over and turn on the light in the bathroom. And you say, of course, I'll turn the light on the bathroom. And you come over, you flip it on. There's no violation. There's no prohibition. It's completely allowed. It's interesting because Rav Lau is bringing this forward about asking a Jew to do something by another Jew who hasn't even, let's say, ended Shabbos yet. So some person said Havdalah. So let's say I'm a Boba Verchasid. I wait an hour until Shabbos is finished. Shabbos finishes at 8:29, but I'm a Chassid. We wait a whole 31 minutes. We don't end Shabbos and do Havdalah till 9 o'clock. But the guy next door, he's not a Chassid. When Shabbos ends at 8:30, he does Havdalah, and that's it. I do Havdalah, it's finished. Did you know when Shabbat ends, you don't even have to rush to do Havdalah. You're allowed to say this: Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh Lechol. Not Baruch Atah Hashem, just Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh Lechol. Baruch, which means blessings. Hamavdil, for the separation. Ben Kodesh Lechol, between Shabbat and weekdays. And then you can go ahead and do everything it is in Shabbos Dik, and then do Havdalah. So let's say your daughter comes home and says, Mommy, I gotta be at Jessica's house like in 10 minutes. Shabbos ended, can you take me right now? You say, I want to do Havdalah first. Mommy, I need to go right now. I can't wait for you to do Havdalah. You can do it. You can take her. Because Shabbat has ended, you just simply say that phrase. Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh Lechol. You take your car keys, you start the car, you go and you drive her to Jessica's house, you come home, and then you do Havdalah. And you haven't violated Shabbat. But that's not the question here. The question here is, can you, if you don't say Havdalah for another half hour and somebody else has said Havdalah, can you then do things after you've, can you ask that person to do things for you because they've already ended Shabbos? Yes. I told you the case of when I was in Borough Park one time and I was saying Havdalah at a time that was earlier than they say it. They all come running over to me because then I don't want to call myself I'm the guy who finished Shabbos early, so I can run over and push an elevator button for them. They have, what floor do you want? 7? No problem. 7. There, go Gesundheit. Hey, you know what I mean? Because they won't push an elevator button. It's so much faster than waiting for everything to climb up and down one at a time in the Shabbos elevator. They want to go to 14. Here's 14 because I already ended Shabbos. Right? So this is the interesting way that Rav Lau brings this issue of time zones in. But then he says one person has ended Shabbos or started Shabbos, the other person hasn't started Shabbos or has ended Shabbos. Everybody knows about the laws of owning chametz. So here it is. It's Pesach is coming. You're not allowed to own chametz on Pesach. Does that mean that you have to rid your entire house of everything that's chametz? That means throwing out every cereal box that you just opened yesterday. It means getting rid of the bag of flour that you bought at Costco last week and throwing it out or giving it away. Everything. It means Alex Roth has to give away all of his bourbon. Like that's not going to happen. So what we see, shaking his head, what we have to do is we have to find a way. So we sell it. We sell it to somebody who isn't Jewish. Michael Rubin does a form, Chabad does a form, whoever wants to sell their chametz, you make a donation and you say, here's whatever it is, I'm selling my chametz. And I take it upon myself because I don't trust people, they're going to forget. I sell chametz for a lot of people myself. I do for my daughter, I do for my brother, I do for my some of my friends. Everybody that I think about that I think that isn't going to sell their chametz, I try and include them that I should sell, because I think about other people. The rabbi of the shul, so in this case, we sell the chametz really for everyone in the congregation, for the whole kahal. So whether or not, it's nice to observe the thinking that you're selling your chametz, and you do, and you should be doing it. But just in case you forgot, we have a heter in there. We say we're going to sell the chametz, so you shouldn't, just in case. But in an ordinary case where all the Jews in the world are prohibited from working on Shabbos, and you can't ask somebody to do something for you on Shabbos because the laws of Shabbos only apply to you. They don't apply to them if they haven't brought Shabbos in. What about chametz and the ownership of that whole thing with the chametz during a different time zone? So now, when does the prohibition of owning the chametz begin? According to Rav Halpern, he's known by his Sfarim, by his books. His book is called the Oneg Yom Tov. I love that. Oneg, Oneg, like Oneg Shabbat, the celebration of Yom Tov. I think it's a beautiful name for a book. He's a great, the Rav Halpern, you can look him up. It was a 19th century posek and from Poland. So he says that since the whole prohibition of owning chametz is a prohibition of a physical object. It's something that you can touch. It's tangible. You have the goods are there. He says if the chametz is located in an earlier time zone, and the place that he's selling it is a place that Pesach has already started, he can't sell it there. The prohibition falls on the object, not the person. That's what he says. Then there's the opinion of the Maharash, Rav Mongliver. He's from Lithuania, Mohaliver, Shmuel Mohaliver. He says there's a different prohibition that doesn't fall on chametz. It falls on the person. Therefore, you can sell it to another time zone. So there's a difference of opinion there. One says you can't sell it to a different time zone, and it's the prohibition falls on the actual chametz, not the person. And another rabbi says it falls on the person, and therefore you can sell it to another time zone. Who cares? We're selling our chametz in Toronto. I'm selling my chametz through Toronto. But what about you go on a site, and then you realize, I want to feel very special. I want to sell it through Rav Lau in Israel. I want to sell it through a serious rabbi. I want to sell my chametz through a gadol, so I'm completely protected with all the fences around, all the rules. So I choose to do that. And then you realize that the time zone that you fax it in, you fax your page in, you have to have a form, you fill out a form, you have to sign it. You sign the form, and I'm coming to a contract. It's a contractual agreement that I'm selling my chametz, and the intention is that I'll buy it back after Pesach. You're buying it back. By the way, that's why you should make a donation. You really should not just do it and not pay. You have to pay $1, a shekel or more, because it's a contract. Would a lawyer do something for you for free? They don't. Even if he wants to do it for you as a favor, he'll say, give me $1 or give me $20, because it's the legal transaction. If monetary value changes hands, then there's a contract. Weddings, I say it all the time. I say to the groom when he presents the ring, we're going to put the ring on the bride's finger. I say, do you own this ring? And they say, of course I own this ring. Okay, good. Now you can say Hareyat Mekudeshet Li, and you can put it on her finger. I had a wedding a few months ago, and I said to the groom, do you own this ring? And he said to me, no. And I said, that was the wrong answer. He borrowed it actually because it was just a plain band. And I said, don't tell me. Now you told me that. We're going to do a transaction. I made him at the wedding pay $1 to get the rings before he can put it on the bride's finger. Because if it's a legal transaction, you're paying something for the chametz that you're selling, then you have the right to buy it back. What right do you have to buy your chametz back? Then Alex is going to lose all of his bourbon because he didn't pay $1. And the person who bought it is going to say, you know what, that was a good deal. I got all the chametz, I got all his booze, and I don't have to sell it back to him. That wouldn't be good. So now we have two opinions. Are we talking about a prohibition of a person or the machinery which is operating, the fax machine or whatever it is? How does that rest on the person? What is the final position? How do we deal with this in the time zones in terms of chametz? So what do we have now? We have two rabbis with two opposing positions. I'll stop talking in a minute. There's a machloket. Big surprise. Two rabbis, they don't agree with each other. It's never happened before. It's the first time. And the issue of the chametz between the object or the person in a different kind of a mitzvah. What are we talking about? Does the prohibition fall on the person or does it fall on the object? I don't know. I guess we could think about all kinds of different things. We could think about perhaps tefillin. You know, the tefillin, they don't do anything all by themselves. Somebody has to put them on. It falls on the person. The person has to agree and want to put on the tefillin to have the mitzvah. You know, just owning a pair of mitzvah, it's nice that you bought them. It's terrific. They sit in the bag. A lot of people do that. They buy them. They sit in the bag. I'd use them once for their bar mitzvah, and they put them in. They never see them again, God forbid, until chas v'shalom they go to a shiva, and all of a sudden they break them open. You always know because it's a brand new. The creases are still there in the tefillin. They've never been unfolded before. You can always tell, right? They've never seen light of day. But that's a different story. We know the mitzvah falls upon the person. So the Taz says, the Taz is somebody who comments on the Shulchan Aruch, on the outside margins. There's the Shach and there's the Taz. So, you know, in every Sefer, you've always got the main commentaries. You've always got, whether it's Rav Moshe Isserlis or whether it's Rav Yosef Karo, but then you've got everybody else's opinions and they fall along the sides. Very similar to the Talmud. When you have the Talmud and you have the Mishnah, the main source of the page, and then you have all the commentaries around it in the Gemara. So Rav Lau was the first person to deal with this question, and he begins by quoting the Shulchan Aruch. And we talked about that. He said, can someone derive benefit from somebody else who hasn't accepted Shabbos? And regarding a Yontif Sheni, he says, a visitor from another country of Israel. How about this? Somebody from Israel who only keeps one day of Yontif. They don't keep 2 days of Yontif. And they come to Canada, and they don't even have to come to shul. They can drive a car, they can go to Yorkdale, they can do whatever they want the second day of Yontif. Second day of Yontif is something that's ancient. We shouldn't even be doing it anymore. That's another story. We do it because we know what the time zone, we know what the changes are. Why do we have to have 2 seders? I'll tell you why we have to have 2 seders. Because somebody might have a mother-in-law who'll be insulted. They didn't come to his seder in the first night. You'll come to me in the second night. Or father-in-law. I don't see the purpose anymore, but we still do it, right? So, you know, it's a mystery to me, but nevertheless, we know that if somebody who doesn't keep Yontif on the second day and they're not obligated, a visiting Jew, you can ask that other Jew to do a malacha for you on the Yontif Sheni, on the second day. If the person's Israeli and they're coming to stay with you, it's the greatest gift in the world for you for Yontif. Henry, can you turn on the stove? Henry, can you make this? Henry, I shut off the barbecue. Henry, can you you can ask him to do anything you want because it's not a malacha for him. He doesn't even keep the second day Yontif. You can get benefit from that. You can derive benefit. The answer is 100% yes. I think that's one of the greatest interesting things, you know. We had a rabbi I'm trying to think who it was. If it was Rabbi Galinkin or somebody was visiting us one time. Yom Tov Sheni, he didn't have, Rosh Hashanah is different, by the way. Rosh Hashanah, you have to keep the second day. That's a different thing. But let's say they're visiting on a second day of Sukkot. They don't keep the second day of Sukkot. They can drive a car and come. They want to be in shul because they want to hear Rabbi Shaim's sermon. They only came because he wanted to hear Rabbi Shaim's sermon. He can get in his car and he can fill it up with gas, come over to the shul, sit there in shul, and then afterwards he can get in his car and drive home. We go, I just saw the rabbi driving home on Yom Tov. But he's allowed to because he doesn't even keep the second day Yom Tov. I find that fascinating. I find that very, very interesting. So how does it work with time zones? With time zones, if it's Shabbos for some people in the world and not yet Shabbos for others. Regarding Chametz, if Pesach hasn't started for you yet, but it's already started for the other time zones, you have two opinions. So Chametz is a machloket, and between the object and the person, it really comes down to, it depends on that person. So the answer is, there is no answer. It's one of those things that stays in the air. And that's what I love about Judaism. Sometimes I can't give you the real answer. I have to say, and by the way, the Gemara does this all the time. If you read Daf Yomi, I'm not a Daf Yomi person, but I admire everybody that is. And you're reading, you'll find out that some things are open-ended. They don't give you the final solution. They say, this is what it is. You decide, you have to make a decision. Does it fall on the person or does it fall on the object? Can I sell my chametz if it's already, and the answer is, it's up to you. Thank God we really don't have to deal with it because we can sell it here in Toronto. We have enough people to sell it with. But I find it to be an interesting question of Judaism. I want to sell my chametz in Israel. It's already Pesach there. Can I sell it there and send it in there? The answer is, it's up to you. And I find that interesting. You have to decide if the law is formed because of the object, the chametz that you're selling, or is the falling upon the person? All right, we'll leave it. We'll leave that. We're not going to get together over Pesach. I know you're all disappointed. But I think that it's going to be difficult. It's a challenging time. I wish I was teaching, but we'll take a break for a couple of weeks. I'll give you a break. And then what we'll do is we'll resume afterwards, and we're going to finish up with some more technology stuff because I want to go through an interesting question, which deals with technology. And it has to do with when somebody gets pregnant or somebody gets pregnant through artificial insemination. What is the halacha? Does Jewish law allow that? Is it something that we encourage? Is it something that should be encouraged? When is it allowed? When is it not allowed? And after we deal with that, that'll be our transition from technology into the whole issue of medical ethics. And we'll talk about some of those things. So we got a message from Bernie, and he tuned in a little bit late. Don't worry about it. We're not counting, we're not scoring everybody on attendance. And he said that he has a bit of Haggadah trivia to share. And I asked you to prepare something, and I am interested, and I'd love for you to do that. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for today's discussion. As always, very enlightening and very interesting. So thank you, Marshall. I wanted to talk to you about Haggadot. Can you see this one clearly?
Of course.
Enough?
It's the Goldenberg.
Well, yeah, this one, I've been using this one for 50 years since I came to Canada. Okay, and it's not very expensive. I think now they sell them for about $5.50 at the Jewish bookstores. And there are more expensive ones that you can buy. I've got a couple of them that are more modern and more illustrated and have more discussion. But I wanted to talk to you about the Haggadahs that I had growing up, which were
Maxwell
not
House.
Yeah, which were not so elaborate and were free. So the first one I wanted to talk to you about, this is not the original. The original was a plain paper cover. It's the
If you
Maxwell
want to
House.
see more clearly, everyone, you can change your view to speaker view, and then it'll be bigger. Go ahead, Bernie.
So this is the Maxwell House one. This is more modern. The old ones had a plain paper, non-glossy cover with very little decoration. I don't have those anymore. What was interesting about the Maxwell House Haggadah, it was free with a purchase of a can of Maxwell House coffee. And the story here is that I think it was 1923, Maxwell House was the first coffee to put out a coffee with a kosher for Pesach label. And this is one that we used. You could, I think everybody had one, but we had these. The other one was interesting. This one. This one, you know what this one is?
I haven't seen it. Tell me.
This one was put out by Barton's Candy, and it came in a box of Barton's chocolate as a way. And I think in their chocolates, they had something inside the box of candy for each of the different Jewish holidays. The Barton's Candy, you can still get Barton candies, but the Klein family, who originated Barton's, sold their business, and it was ultimately bought up by a company called Bazzini's Chocolates. And I think you can still get them here. I think Sobeys has Barton's candies. I remember they also used to have Barton's ice cream kosher for Passover. And then the third free one that we used to use, you can still get, is the Monashevitz one. You bought a bottle of Monashevitz wine from the store. Now, here in Canada, it's the LCBO, but you could buy wine in almost anywhere in the States. And these came for free as well, right?
Right.
And they all have, now I think there's just one of these. I think it's if I remember, the Haggadahs in the early times, it was generally Haggadah was the song that ended the Seder. There
Right.
wasn't a lot of other songs. At the end of the Seder, you did the Motzi, and if not always.
The Birkat Hamazon and Chad Gadya.
Yeah, that's it. And that's how it ended. So times have changed and the Haggadahs have got fancy. But, there's a certain nostalgia for us of the older years to bring us back to the simpler form of the Haggadah. You go through, you tell the stories, you sing the song and chime.
I agree. Beautiful. Does anybody else have a Haggadah that they would like to share or show? No? I'm surprised.
Well, somebody can do that next time.
I have a small one, but it's packed away with all the Pesach stuff. I think it's also from coffee, but it's a very small one, very colorful.
Right.
I'll try to look for it next time. Or
So
after Pesach.
I encourage people to buy a new Haggadah every year. So when you come to my Seder, what happens is I tell everyone here, I have the yellow Goldenberg if that's what you want to use. I recommend that you take one of the Haggadot from my collection and use that, so when you're sharing around the table, you can share a different reading or a different version. So everybody has a different Haggadah. We don't say we're on page 22. Like everybody has to read something. I think Alex Roth makes his own Haggadah every year. He makes one, or he created his own. I have a copy of it. I actually have it, Alex, from last year. You gave it to me. Talk about it a little bit. You made it. You created your own.
Yeah, so we, got into this habit, if you will, of picking stuff off the internet and different sayings and cartoons and readings and stuff, depending on what's happening around the world. And so, yeah, this is last year's. I think we're just going to use it again this year. But we've done this. I don't know. We must have 6 or 7 different editions of the Rose Roth Haggadah.
Right. Send it to me again. I have one somewhere, but I got to dig it up. And here's Faye.
So this is a Chagall Haggadah. This was a gift to my son when he had his bar mitzvah. Of course, he didn't think much of it as a gift, but anyways, we use it all the time, and it's all decorated. It's all Chagall imprint, so it's a beautiful book, and it comes on our table every year. So
beautiful. So a lot of people collect Haggadahs with certain artwork in them, because Raskin put one out. There's a lot of famous artists that if the artwork is beautiful and you love it and you like to look at it every year and it's meaningful, or if it was gifted to you, if you got one that you received from someone, it's a beautiful thing to do, to have different Haggadah. How many people here use a different Haggadah than everybody else, or see that everyone is using a different one? A few. How many are happy just using the plain red and yellow Goldberg? Lots. Because you know why? It's like that Manischewitz bottle. If they ever changed it from the square bottle, you'd be upset. Everybody wants the what's familiar and traditional. Celia has one here. Let's take a look at this. You have to unmute and tell us who what it is. Unmute, Celia.
This is the Saul Raskin one.
That's a beautiful Haggadah. I have that too. Do you want to see some? I can run downstairs quickly if you have 1 minute. If you have to run, you can run. But if you want to see what I have for Haggadahs just as a collection, I can show you if you want to wait 1 minute. You want anybody interested or not bother? All right, give me 1 second. I'll show you something.
Wait, Marshall, are we having a class next week or no?
There's no class. Well, next week there is.
Okay.
Next week, yes.
So
I'll be back in 1 second. I'll show you something interesting.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the Chris Rock Haggadah, the smiting of the firstborn.
Smiting of the firstborn.
This is his Pirkei, right?
You still have the blue one? That blue one still here?
Which one?
The blue felt cover?
Yeah, I think so. This is from your parents. Saul Raskin.
I've got one, I think it's called the
Hello,
family.
Ava.
I've got one called the Family Haggadah. I think that's what it's called. And I photocopied it.
Marshall's given us a chance to chat.
How you doing, Esther?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay.
It's nice
Esther,
to see you.
Nice to see you. That blue painting, it looks like a railroad station.
It is, and I looked that up. I Googled it, and it is a Claude Monet. It's a train coming into Lazare Station.
I've noticed it every week, and I think it's lovely.
Yeah, I liked it too.
How much is it worth?
That is just a poster.
I know.
It's not even framed, so it's. I just like to look at it.
It's
Yeah.
really nice.
I love train stations. I love anything to do with traveling. I don't travel anymore, but I love it. The idea. I have spent in my youth. I spent many a night in train stations and airports and all kinds of places where
I love
couldn't
trains
find a place
also.
to stay.
All right. I love trains. I love trains.
I do too. Yeah, I love
So
it.
I'll just tell you a fast train story. Let me just push stop record. Nobody needs to hear this.